Welcome to Envision Radio from the United Way of Greater Charlottesville, City of Promise, and News Radio 98.9 WINA, and brought to you by the Jefferson School Foundation with Marky and Price coming to you from the studio right here in downtown Charlottesville. Sitting here talking about Macs and do we need them? Today I'm thrilled to be joined by Latricia Giles, a community advocate for justice for all and all its forms. Thank you for coming today, Latricia.
Well, thank y'all for having me, because I just feel like I'm a regular old person in the city.
No,
I'm
nobody.
Happy to be here.
Every single person make this city great.
You're right. It does take us all. It does take us all.
Fellow executive director of FAR.
Oh, wow. See? Y'all two big dogs.
Listen.
Now we got two big dogs in here.
Listen, we're about to
People
solve
at the
it.
top.
Says she want a big dog.
So let's, for people who don't know or haven't worked with you, let's learn a little bit about you, and then we'll talk about the work. So just talk about, where you grew up, how you got here, and then we'll trace the path. We typically trace the path chronologically for like a hot second. Okay. And then it goes other places quickly after that. But we start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we end at the end. Now, how we get in between those two things is, out of 160 episodes, we've never done it the same way twice. So
that's a good point.
That's good. Okay. I'm along for the ride and the journey. That's why I'm here.
So tell us a little bit about how you grew up and where you're from.
Well, originally I'm from the Bronx, New York. So I will say I sometimes miss it, but I'm grateful for the journeys and experiences I've had. So I will say, leaving the Bronx, I've been a little bit of everywhere. So lived in Tennessee, Florida, Virginia now, North Carolina. So I've been a little bit of everywhere. But yeah, born and raised in New York City. Shouts out to the Bronx.
Wow.
Shout out to the Bronx. Who you cheering for the Super Bowl?
Well, that's not a dog in my fight kind of category, because, to me, neither here nor there. But because, shouts out to my daddy, Harry Giles.
Shout out.
He is a Eagles fan. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hopefully put that on the Eagles. I'm going to hopefully be celebrating with my daddy.
That's what I'm doing, too.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What's your?
I don't know. I like Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I don't know nobody else out there but them two.
Yeah, that's fine.
They deserve it. They deserve it.
As good a reason as any.
I know San Francisco. Not San Francisco. It's
a red team. It's a red team. The Chiefs.
The Chiefs. I know that they won
the 6-time
2 years in a row.
That's right.
I don't got time for that.
That's right.
But that's all I know about them. Congratulations to them. I guess you did a good job before. But because I'm on the Eagles train, we got to go there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just watching for Kendrick.
What do you think that's gonna? What is that gonna be like?
I heard he ain't doing that like us. I don't know. I might not even watch it.
There's no way.
That's the only one I want to hear.
There's no
Squall Up is
way.
lit, though.
I feel like with all the trouble that this song has caused, and Drake, I'm a little disappointed in this progression. So I think that
only disappointed is crazy. Like only disappointed. I'm disgusted.
Look, that was the best of the words that I could use today. But I am definitely. I think that it will be interesting to see how it does go, because I know that there's a lot of potential legal matters with the song itself and what it's done. But I think that if it's an occupational hazard, personally, if you decide to be a rapper and you decide to get into a rap beef, I understand that maybe your money may have been stopped, but also you've done the same thing in past times. So don't change up now because a hit dog holler.
Hit dog do holler.
You got to do what you got to do.
That was such a crazy, just what a wild time. But also like, man, I miss it. Someone mentioned this. They were like, can you imagine like getting into, sort of like a public feud, but then like you take your shot and he just drops a grenade on you? Like, it just felt like, right? Like your song was good and it was catchy, and then this happens. Can you imagine like everywhere you go?
It ain't about being catchy.
You have to hear that.
It's about the culture.
That was wild. That was wild.
Well, yeah.
I mean, look, I'm here for it, but yeah, don't, if you, what do they say? If you come for the king, you better not miss. And Lord have mercy, he missed. So how to chart your path for us? So you're in the Bronx. What brings you to Charlottesville, right?
So, just a whole bunch of experiences. So I actually, 9/11 was a very triggering thing for me. That was my first day of high school.
Is that right?
Goodness.
And it was one of the times where I told my parents, after a year after that, I was like, this is a lot. And I had my oldest sister who lived in Tennessee at the time. Her husband was stationed in Fort Campbell. And we had decided as a family, let's
go.
Let's make that move.
Oh,
but,
wow.
I was 16 at the time, so it was definitely a culture shock because, like I said, I do rep my city. I love New York. A lot of my personal experiences that actually inform and shape the work that I do today, I saw and heard and smelled and seen. And, a lot of it is like also retrospect. I looked back and was able to chart those things. But my mother was a passionate advocate herself. She was a social worker. She believed in community, and there was never a person that she would turn away. She was fiercely about her community, about the people, and about making sure that, we are living in a world that we can say that we are proud of, and that, what we fought. Our ancestors have fought for this land and this thing. So fighting for freedom has always been there. My father was also just a hard worker doing his best to make sure that, we had the things that we needed. But, a lot of the inequities and things I seen as a kid, literally traveling from the Bronx to Manhattan, because when you're riding on the train, you see shifts, but you don't realize those shifts because you're living in it. But everybody understands you traveling on a train. You riding your train, riding the 4 train, and gradually from 183rd. As you get into Manhattan, you start to see how people change, how
on the train,
how the neighborhoods
That's
change.
An interesting
How even the subway stations are a little bit different. And so,
of course, infrastructure, the way we build infrastructure is relative to the way society is built. That makes sense.
Exactly. So I remember asking my dad one day when my dad used to drive, and he would be picking up, dropping off folks, and I was like, why does it look different? And that was just early life learning, and so just picking it up as a kid.
Yeah, you talk about this culture shock from the north to the south. Can you talk a little about how that affected you as a 16-year-old? Like, we see in racism everywhere, but obviously it's different. It's always different. So can you talk a little bit about your time in Tennessee, because you're still a young person, and how you navigated that and what you saw and the differences between these two places? So
moving to Tennessee was definitely a culture shock in many perspectives, but mainly because it was Tennessee. And low-key, no shout out to Tennessee. Tennessee, as they used to say. And living in, I would say at that time, it was technically Oak Grove, Kentucky. It was a very small town, little stoplight. And I will say the first time that I've ever been called the N-word, and not from a communal context, had occurred at a college fair. Leaving a college fair. This is crazy. And so, I was always prepared for it because, like I said, my parents, especially my mother, activist, I understood, but to experience that by a peer, and not because, we knew each other. I didn't know that person from Adam.
Right.
And those were just some of the smaller experiences. So I ended up going to a college in Tennessee. I don't even feel like naming it, a small college. I got a scholarship there, but
no free promo.
No free promo. No free.
They need to send you a check. That's what I say too.
Because look, I didn't even last there till Thanksgiving because of how traumatizing that place was. But
wow, really.
I ended up from there, just kind of finding my path. Like, I ended up moving to Nashville because there was a little bit more opportunities at the time. Clarksville is definitely a different place now. But I ended up just, going to school because my mother said it was important, but my path is strange because I was in retail. So for many years, I was in retail sales. I worked at T-Mobile. I worked my way up into management. I sold a lot of phones. I did a lot of phone sales. And then I just kind of ended up moving to North Carolina, and job opportunity took me there, but then I ended up leaving T-Mobile. Another job opportunity took me to different parts of the state. I ended up working at Microsoft. They ended up taking me to Florida, and then I got to Florida, and I was like, I'm tired of selling stuff. Like, in that time, like I said, I always been to school. I always want to say shouts out to Winston-Salem State University. I'm a proud Ram, proud HBCU graduate.
There to go to promo.
And listen, because that's where the cash went too.
Right.
That's right.
But I ended up. Something in me, I was like, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep doing this. So I ended up moving back to North Carolina and re-enrolling back into Winston-Salem State, and finishing there with a degree in interdisciplinary studies with a focus on sociology. Because I was always interested in people, but like I said, college was kind of secondary because my mother encouraged it. But I knew the value of it. I know the value of education, but I made so much money in sales. I was like, I would be foolish. I was 18 to like late 20s, making good money, more
if you
money.
Good in sales, you good.
Yeah. And so I did my job, and so I ended up, after graduating there, I still was a little uncertain about what I wanted to do in my life. And it was between divinity school and an MSW program. So the MSW program came up first. I got into a good school. But, I felt led or, something that... I felt called.
That's right.
And I knew I was called to the space. Now, I will say divinity school, so I ended up going to Wake Forest University School of Divinity, and I got an MDiv. But it was the most traumatic 3 years of my life when you're
in divinity
school, and that's just my personal journey, and not discouraging it for anybody else who wants to try it, because I actually
it might be for somebody else.
No, it actually was for me too.
Oh, okay.
But when you have to deconstruct a lot of things about yourself, your life, your foundational core. It's jarring to you, but
sure.
Coming out on the other side, that's also cultivated a lot of this workspace too. It was in divinity school when I decided, I was like, I know I can do this housing work for sure. And I was just taking a class, but also my call to environmental issues. It actually was in a class called Watershed Discipleship, because I had to examine my a watershed of origin.
Okay.
And that is when I started to think about the Bronx even more, and all of the environmental inequities that happen when you think about where bus stations or bus depots are placed, or when you think about the ways where trash is stored, or how in certain communities or neighborhoods where those things are, or when you think about congestion. You see now that they're taxing for high congestion rates, but it's only in
New York?
In New York. One of the first states, or the first state to charge a congestion tax in the space. But it's not in every part of the city, so you're only charging tax downtown where you want to reduce because of a certain population. So, a lot of, and that's to me, and I see it as, that time was an interrogation of like, I know that this is the space that I'm called to. It's not, I've never been a stranger to the work. I've always been out there in the streets. I've always been advocating for people. But it was just something about being in that class, thinking about it from the environmental perspective, because I will say before that class, I was like, Black folks don't have time. We have other issues. There's dead bodies on the street for real. Like, I can walk outside my door, and at that time, George Floyd was happening when I was in divinity school, and all of these people were dying, and I was like, oh my God, what am I supposed to be doing here? And so taking that class, I was at first, what do you mean? But then when you really start to look at the impacts of environmental injustice, especially towards communities of color, and you're looking at how, once again, intentional plants are placed in communities of color, when you're looking at how just toxins in the water where communities usually are placed where they are, when you're looking at even people trying to fight against environmental pollution is the ways that they've been treated. So the chemicals in the food, when we're even talking about in housing, how some places, when we talk about studies of like Baltimore, lead paints, New York's places like that, where Black and brown and other marginalized peoples are living and being impacted. So
everything's connected.
Everything's connected, and divinity school connected.
What a place to figure all that out, right? Like, but I find that when I was younger, and I was like, they ain't right? You know that things ain't right. But you go to school and you read scholarship, and you're like, oh, I have words now. I always knew what was going on, but I have the words to understand my environment and look back on those things and understand why those things were happening the way they were. At first, you're like, God, these things are happening. I don't understand why.
why
these things are happening, but giving myself the opportunity to read,
and I will
to understand
say,
this. That ain't just me.
It was
a whole bunch of people.
It was definitely I don't know. It was just something about really being, like you said, to take those words that you're learning and then you're actually like seeing it. But I'm always an action-oriented person, so what am I now going to be able to do with what I'm seeing? What am I now going to be able to transform or work towards? Because the work of justice will probably never be done as long as we have people who worry about their own self-interest and are not afraid to put that in front of people.
Right.
And so the work will always be heavy. And, I just think we all have callings in our life, if you want to use that language. We all have things that we're to do, but I know one of those things that we are to do is to learn how to be better towards one another. Sure. Because that is a lot that I don't know. I feel like we're just all interconnected, and if it really does take all of us to really understand our humanity, and it's sad that people have to sit in classes to go then lecture other people about how to treat other people. Like, what is wrong with us that we are just inherently like, it's about me, not about we. And I get it. Like my mother always used to say, self-preservation is the first rule, and we're here together. Like we are on this planet, point blank period, together. I shouldn't have to be fighting because I need a place to stay. Why can't I afford to live in this place?
Right.
Why can't I afford, or why can't we deserve to have fresh food in our community? Why is it that it's hard for people to understand that, these systems that you have in place have literally been a way that people have not been able to get a head start in economic mobility and being able to generate wealth. And, I just think it's where we are, but we got to keep the fight. So.
If you are just joining us, this is Envision Radio from the United Way of Greater Charlottesville and City of Promise News Radio 98.9, 1070 AM WINA, brought to you proudly by the Jefferson School Foundation, the proud owner of the Jefferson School City Center, where education, innovation, and community engagement come together to build a brighter future, dedicated to preserving and sustaining the historic Jefferson School. That was a lot. That's a real promo.
You have a great reading, voting tone, everything. That was perfect. Like I feel like you need to be my personal spokesperson when I'm walking around.
The narrator in your head.
Well, listen, and you spent more. I only spent a couple years in New York, but what people have always told me as I've spoken more is they're like, you talk fast, and I'm like, you should hear my dad talk, because
I talk fast too,
because he was raised in New York, and so I never thought about it until now. Every time I talk, I have my own voice in my head being like, slow down.
You don't seem like a fast talker to me.
But you've spent like 3 years around me. I think you just got used to my cadence and then you do stuff and you have to speak and whatever, and they time it and they're like, okay, this is like 8 minutes, and I'm like, I got through it in 5, and then they're like, slow it down, and then I'm like, now it took 14, and I'm like, I can't regulate the tempo, right? I'm either like naturally just we're going, or I end up in this plotting, like the pauses are all wrong. I'm like watching Obama highlights, like how does this guy talk and pause and genuflect at the right time?
Listen, that's a talent.
I took a class in school about it. I was like,
it's crazy. It's pretty scientific too, which is I found really interesting. I read a little bit about it, and you start to look at his style is very similar to a lot of other people who have just the cadence and the inflection and the
MLK.
He's got some MLK in him, yeah. But the way he uses dead space, I think, is really interesting. Because he'll stand there sometimes and just
I'm terrible.
And then there's a very
I feel like I get awkward, and then everybody feels awkward with me.
People fill space with words, right? That's me.
Yeah. That's not bad for this particular enterprise. We are currently being compensated to talk.
But sometimes I'd be like, I do be quiet.
Just stare at him. Just look at him.
What you gonna say next?
That's exactly right.
This age of Zoom has been helpful.
Sure.
I'm okay with silence. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with silence now.
Yeah.
I've learned it's.
Yeah.
I think my last job I was doing Catch a Fire, and I was doing webinars, and it was my first time really doing that. And I was like, this is odd, and I just had to talk for an hour, but I also had to just had these weird pauses sometimes because people would ask questions, and so it was just a whole lot. So I've just got comfortable with awkward silence and all of that
What kind of webinars were
So
on this work?
So I was working at a nonprofit that basically connected nonprofits with a capacity building material. So that's what Catch a Fire does. And so I did that for before I took my new role, and I was doing that for a year and a half, and a lot of it was literally just webinars weekly. And I used to be so terrified because I'm like, what does someone talk about literally for an hour, even though you pay me to talk about this for an hour? So that was an interesting time.
So go back to Go Forward for me. So you're in Tennessee, you're all up and down the East Coast, and you're North Carolina, and you're Florida, and you're so how do you land? How do you land here? What part of the story brings you to Charlottesville?
It was ironically, Charlottesville was the most unrealistic, like unexpected thing. I finished Divinity School. My wife was finishing up her last year.
Is that where you guys met?
Yes, we met in Divinity School. And, yeah, that's a whole nother.
Listen.
Hallelujah, amen.
There are so many overlapping layers to that short sentence.
It'll bring you to where you need to be. Amen.
Look, I tell people the only reason I sometimes know I went to Divinity School was to find my wife, because there was no, I couldn't have imagined. I didn't even go in there as
even if you didn't learn nothing but that.
I learned that my wife was there, and I was grateful that I found the glory of my life, the sunshine that brings me joy. So that shouts out to Wake for that, because I gave y'all some money too.
Yeah.
But we got to Charlottesville because we were like, well, who gets a job first?
Okay. So, and just anywhere, like whoever gets. So
we the other person will figure it out.
Okay. That is literally what happened. So I was on the website, and also another shouts out to my first organization that I worked at here, the Community Climate Collaborative.
Yeah, sure.
I ended up getting the job there. So we packed up literally. My wife didn't even finish. She did finish. So we moved
just
a month early.
Blast.
we moved in April of her last year, and she kind of went back and forth to finish up some things. But then I took the job, and it was literally like we kind of threw darts at a map, and Charlottesville got the dart. Because at first, honestly, my first thing was anywhere but Virginia. We had a few states.
Anywhere but Virginia, but the map in the middle of Virginia, this is as central as it gets.
That when is as central as it gets.
It gets. I move with what I know it feels right.
Right.
And so I didn't know much about Charlottesville, honestly, other than the tiki torches.
Right. We'll never get over it. I'll buy it.
And so, a lot of my friends.
I respect it. Like, why would I want to go there? Like,
and so a lot of my friends were like, "Are you sure?" It's like,
Yeah.
I got a job.
That is
so
a
we're gonna be
crazy
grateful.
thing to do.
But we moved sight unseen. Literally, I think I came after I got the job offer. I might have came up, got to look for an apartment, found one randomly, and we were like, "Oh, great!" And that's how I actually landed here. But I will say I did more research after I got the job, y'all. But I really, I was passionate about what I could potentially do with the work. Is what actually got me here, because I knew that I would have a chance to especially bring a voice to help marginalized communities understand the impacts of environmental racism, environmental injustices in the ways that, it's not just solar panels on houses.
Right, I don't think people hear that often about environmental racism. You will be like, as soon as the waters rise, your house is already situated in a plane of existence that will flood first. Like, that is the nature of systems.
I mean, come on. And, I think about all of these things, and like I said, they really are interconnected down to when you start thinking about housing placement now, because of course, who's wonderfully given, don't care who live in the nicest parts of Miami now because they know it's flooding. Mm-hmm. But they're trying to take over land and gentrifying where it's higher land.
And then Pasadena and Altadena, the land that not on fire and it is on fire. Now you got to move somewhere. They need to move somewhere. And they're trying to buy up land there.
And I'm
from Black
be
and brown people.
Very interested to see what happens with that, because they know that they're going in there lowballing those people for those homes. I think it's very interesting, the whole insurance thing that happened right before. Like there's just a lot of things that we know, but it's still crazy to say out loud in 2025. But then also, we're in 2025, so it is a lot of different it's just a lot of different things moving. So the hope is, once again, that we're able to collaboratively build and educate and mobilize, because that's going to be the key. Education and mobilization going forward, because we've seen in this very week, and we were just briefly chatting about it, the implications are too great. Cutting resources potentially for all of the things, not just some of the things, but all of the things that people essentially need. And, I don't have time, because of the communities that, I serve, to be playing around. So, we in the action stage.
Yeah, that's right. So how'd you wind your way to into talk a little bit about what you're doing now? So
okay, yeah,
you've recently, and I guess not even that. It's been like a year, right?
Yeah,
almost. What month is it?
It feels like it's month
Listen,
7.
It's like dog years. I tell you,
it is like dog years.
I started this job at 35. I'm like in my 50s.
It feels like you've been gone forever.
It feels like I've been gone for a long time.
I said, it feel like Price's been gone for 5 years.
Someone asked me, they were like, because I left right after my son was born. They're like, how old is Jalen? Like 3?
5?
I was like, yeah. I was like, he turns 2
That's crazy.
next month.
I don't believe
it. It hasn't been that long.
Wow.
But it's weird. It is this sort of like
The
interstellar
work is
thing.
speeding up time.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I'm now the executive director of FAR, the Public Housing Association of Residents. And so, yes, if we're moving in dog years, it feels like year 42. But I honestly am still learning and still growing and having a great time learning not only my staff and board and all of those things that you have to learn when you get there, but really learning the community and its residents, because that is the crux of the work that I do, is making sure that we're advocating on behalf of the residents, but also having them advocate on behalf of themselves, because their voices are the most powerful. And that is what we honestly believe is a model. We're completely led by our board, which is comprised of community members, all community members, no one else. You have to live in CRHA communities to be on our board. And then, it's a black staff, black led. And then we have so many different types of folks that we are bringing into our organization, because the reality is, everybody's gonna have to be on this train, and we serve a reflection of so many different people. So we are moving and shaking and trying to build and mobilize and organize. Like, that is my message, action for 2025, because it's community. Everybody need to wake up. I know they say we was woke, but now we really woke, and we have to make sure that we are. Like I said, I take this seriously, because okay, yeah, I got an MDiv, so clearly I was pastoral in some capacity in my mind, but I really do take the heart of the people seriously, and I do take this work seriously, and I think even how I got this job at FAR is the most serendipitous. Like, most of this story of my life, I feel like I'm moving and being led into spaces, because I saw this job a couple of years ago, but I had got another job offer and I took it. And it came back around, and I'm,
What is for you is for you.
I am just so grateful, because somebody was like, you should apply. And I was like, I just took this thing. And so, I am grateful, and I am just patiently waiting, but overly excited about the things that FAR will be able to do in the community, and how the community will transform and be the light that really gets us to where we need to be.
Are you glad you took the job?
I'm actually, sometimes when you're sitting up late at night and you writing and you're reading all this information, you're like, what did I do?
Yep.
But no, overall, I am more than ecstatic. And there's a few things I've been sure about in my life. Marrying my wife was one of them. Going to divinity school, even though I probably, and also taking this job, because I knew that this is the place that I needed to be. I had done work a little bit earlier before leaving North Carolina. I was in AmeriCorps Vista, and I had done work as with Habitat at that time, doing some work in local historically black community in Winston-Salem. And I really started to see some funky stuff, and that's not the word I want to use, but I started to see some funky stuff behind the scenes, working and being able to have access to different community leaders and different things. So also, shouts out to AmeriCorps Vistas. it's amazingly difficult work, but it gave me so much experience. And I see a lot of things that they did, and I don't want that to be in any other community. That's the one thing that I love about have lived in so many communities. Not saying they're all good, bad, or indifferent, but you get to really learn and see the mobilization of different areas. You get to learn different strategies. You get to meet new people. You get to see what's going on in different regions. And I think that is honestly what's been really helpful in me being able to step into this leadership role. I'm not going to lie. I am a first-time executive director. I know you're a first-time ED, but I know that I have the tools and I feel like I'm equipped for this right time. Now, I can't tell you what happens, beyond 5-10 years, and my hope is that I'm still in place, but my hope is that it's definitely better than where it started.
Yeah, when you got there.
And so, I'm just using all of what I bring, all of where I've been, the heart of my mother, who guides me, and I do what I gotta do, but it's with the heart of the people in mind, and that's the people that I serve in many capacities. I mean, I do this work. I do a lot of different things in these streets, but
do you do a lot of different things? Well, great. What do you talk about on the radio besides all the different things that you do in the streets? What you be doing in the streets?
So like I said, I serve a lot of different communities, but some of the other work that I do is with the Women's Initiative. I work as an LGBTQ coordinator there, and actually just moved into just facilitation. But like I said, we have to make sure that we're caring for all of the people in our world. So I work with programming for LGBTQ events. I hold on Fridays once a month a safe space, QT-POC safe space where folks can just come, and if you identify in any of the letter spectrum, you are welcome to join, because that is a place. And then I also do some work with the sister circle of TWI and do some programming around Rest is Resistance, because that book was inspirational for me in another divinity school thing, and so I feel like that one is for BIPOC identifying women. So we're doing a variety of different activities, but we did vision boards last month, where we're going to be talking about self-love in the next few months, but also just resting. Rest is actually resistance in this world
and
today.
I think and I think that is so funny that you said that, because this year, the last 6 months have been about Black women talking about, we gonna rest. We don't know what everybody else fitting to do. We can't speak for you, but we gonna be resting.
And rest has to not just, and I don't want people to think when we're talking about rest, you're going to the nail.
Right.
No. I mean, sometimes it could be in the middle of a busy week and you are overwhelmed. It's okay to give your self-permission to say, you know what, I am going to step back. I am going to recharge. I'm going to refill. I just think in general, like, rest being a resistance is a way to kind of fight back in our capitalist society, because a lot of the times, why are we overworking ourselves? I don't want to have 11 jobs just because. I mean, I got student loan. Yeah, Lord, I hope to give me forgiven, but I don't know. But I got debt, so I gotta work, and so trying to figure out parts of ways to decentralize myself from wanting to be in this capitalistic view that makes me tired, that exerts and extracts from me, because this country, to be honest, has been extracting from people who look like me for too long. And I think that being able to just reclaim that space for yourself, reclaim that space for your body, and recenter is important, and that will help you to be more productive when you want to be and when you need to be. So rest, yeah, I'm here to help people rest, because I'm trying to rest myself for real. I can't preach something that I'm not doing.
That's very true. Wouldn't ask anybody to do anything I wouldn't do.
Exactly.
How have you found the transition from doing more and more work with individuals and with people to having to now have, you're in a role that's much different, and the point of view is much different, and what you're tasked to do is different. And I know there can be a lot of dissonance involved in that, right? It's easy to feel disconnected. It's easy to feel like you're having to sort of, serve two sometimes at odds populations of people, right? Yes. I mean, how have you been able to work yourself through that to say, I got to do all this donor stuff to get the money, to do the work for the people, but the people who I'm doing the work for are looking at me like I'm not around. You just have all this, and that comes early and it comes fast.
Yeah.
Have you found... If you find an answer, let me know.
Look, I was just going to say, look, I'm searching my mind because the reality is, like, it feels like you just have to be super all the time, especially transitioning to that space. Because I know, like, I do want to be out there, and even I got folks. Trish, you got folks to do that now.
That's right. That's right.
It's been honestly just being intentional. Like even to this week, like I'm like, y'all. You can ask me and it's okay, but now we're definitely strongly delegating. So one thing is just stepping into my own. I'm the leader too now. I think it took me a little bit of time to realize that I was like, oh wow, no one is coming here to tell me nothing.
Right?
I don't know about it, but I see the smiles on y'all two faces, and I can only assume from my position down low
down low
that I can look up and I see the smiles on your face. That when I get there, I feel that.
My position
is like, okay,
unbelievable.
But no, it really is just that fine balance, understanding that you know what, there is so much of this. Yes, I have to get this done because it's important, and then also making sure that I'm spending time, not just helping my staff get to where they need to be, but also with the people, because I do get calls from folks that are asking me for help and asking me like, what can I do? So it's like, okay. Some things I know I got to take that because that looks a little. Yes, I need to take that. But it's also, you know what, having trust in my staff, but also building the trust with the community that they understand that I'm doing the things that need to be done to better position them. And I'm gonna be here with you for real, but let me go handle this business because that is what I'm here to help with. Oh, bless you.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's a dance I haven't mastered, and I can't even pick up the Tamiya dance. So that kind of tell there might be a little bump, but I'm gonna get there.
Yeah.
In your bio, and this was important to me. You talk about a just and compassionate society. What does that look like, and how do we move toward it?
Honestly,
small question.
Look, I've been thinking about that, so it's a lot. And look, I'm gonna pull up some of the stuff like that I do bring in my mind because I don't want to miss the mark. Because for me, it is about making sure that everyone has essentially what they need. Like I said a little bit earlier, I don't think that we should have anyone fighting for basic human needs. Like,
and nobody should have a roof over their head. Nobody should have nothing to eat, nothing to eat.
Well, I mean, but honestly, like. Say that again, because that seems like
it's controversial out here.
Like that's a fundamentally, I would argue that is a fundamentally ridiculous thing to have to say out loud.
Yes, it is.
That like in this day and age, with the amount of resources and stuff we have, that to just stand there and be like, look,
maybe want to cuss.
I mean, honestly,
on the air.
But I mean, to be frankly like called a socialist for being like, I think people should have basic stuff. Now, they're like, wow.
Okay, well, this is where I'm going to bring in my MDiv, and I don't bring it in too much. But when we're talking about people and we're talking about compassion and we're talking about a country that is telling us that we built on certain particular Judeo-Christian
Christian
values.
Which, hold on, time out, by the way, is historically inaccurate.
Well, you know that.
It's historically inaccurate.
It's funny, though. Isn't it funny in a, like, no ha-ha type of way?
Look,
what is that, like, funny, weird? Whatever
funny,
that,
weird.
like, meme was or whatever, like, not funny, ha-ha.
Like, not funny, ha-ha, funny,
like,
derogatory.
Funny, weird.
Derogatory.
Yeah. But like, that's the other thing. It's just fundamentally, it's just untrue. It's historically inaccurate.
It's inaccurate. But if this is what people are running and saying, you're working against your own religious value. And it's very weird that, in any book that I have seen, even down to Harry Potter, it's down to a few things. They're saying there's a battle between this good and evil. There's a battle between this light and the dark. So if your thing is calling for you to be in the light, and the teachings that many of our fundamental faith beliefs are set up on.
Abrahamics, at least.
Well, see, I don't want to go too deep today, but
just the 3 Abrahamics. If you just want to talk about them,
if that is what you're saying, it is very scary to me, because then I can't. Then I'd probably be a socialist. any day, because it is. In a place where we're criminalizing homelessness, in a place where you can't even afford to live, like, no tea, no shade to Charlottesville. Why?
Price of living, the cost of living is high, right?
You
One of
would
the second
think
highest
that
in the
we
state?
have a stadium.
I mean, it's
Third
it's high.
highest?
I don't know if it's that high on the list, but it's high.
I heard it was high.
You know, there's,
like,
some, like Loudoun County and Great Falls.
Yeah,
There's some up Northern Virginia,
yeah.
but it's
up
higher.
there.
It's close.
I mean, and for those prices, I'm expecting an NBA team. I'm expecting some
not an
MLB
NBA
action.
team. You expecting a airport with more than 2 planes?
Listen, at least give me a Home Depot.
Aren't they making a
I think it's coming.
Oh,
I
well, there
think
you
it's
go.
coming.
We
Okay,
got a
I
Home
mean,
Depot.
we might not get the NBA team, but okay. So I think that it's weirdly odd that, you know, we're living in these conditions, but we're like, I'm driving down every day, seeing people just laid out, and then you have problems with people being homeless. Like, I don't know where we are in the world, but everybody should have the basic
needs met.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
It's controversial, but yes, they should.
And for me, okay, we all also know that there's going to be people who make a choice, right? So
For
if
sure.
you're choosing that this is not for you, like, I'm also for your own personal choice, as long as it's not violating me or some kids or yourself like that in a dangerous way. You want to live out, that's great.
Yeah.
But to say no one deserves this, you didn't work hard. I have worked hard to the standard of what has been placed on me. Go to school, you know, do great, be exceptionally great at everything. I mean, like, I've always had to be that person. And then I'm like, I'm in debt. I'm sick. I'm broke down. Like, my car's in the shop. Like, what do you want me to do? So I just don't understand how these billionaires and millionaires can sit from their high and lofty places and own corporations and treat people bad and pay low wages, but then complain that people aren't working hard enough, and then don't want to raise the minimum wage, and taking back protections to try to raise overtime, like all these other things that will help people progress. That hopefully, I don't know if anybody needs $1 billion, but look, Lord, if you hear me, give me just a couple $100,000 or something.
What if someone said, they were like, look, if you get to 999 million, we name a dog park after you, and we take everything after that. We'll tax everything after $1 billion. We just give you a plaque that said you won. We'll name a dog park after you.
Like, what do you want? A planet with your name on it?
Like, what do you do with it? Like,
we can name some planets. Like, I don't understand what we're going for now.
I mean, it's a fun exercise. Have you ever tried to spend, like, just theoretically, like, you couldn't do it. Like, think about the craziest things you could do. I'm like, I would buy like 20 planes, and everyone in my family would have a house. They're like, sir, you got to like 20 million.
Yeah, like,
I'm like, oh.
I saw like there's like this thing on Daffy Duck, and they're like millionaire uncle
Scrooge?
or whatever.
Oh,
Scrooge. Yeah. Whatever. And they were like, his little nephews was like, How rich are you, uncle? He was like, and he put like a bunch of cash. And he was like, is that $1 billion? They was like, no, this ain't no billion. This might be a couple of thousands. They said, if you lined $1 million up, you know, line by line, around the world, it would go around the world 1 million times. It's more grains of sand, atoms in your body. Like, that's what we're talking about. Look at your hand. You won't even. That's how. Like, look at all the atoms in your hand. That's what we're talking about.
Why? See, that's the kind
We're
of.
talking about atoms. You can't even see atoms.
Look, I just want one atom then.
Let me ask you a sort of fundamental religion question. Like, what is, and someone who's studied it, and someone who's what is the. Have we lost the plot sort of socially with regard? Because I find, as someone who went to church all the time growing up, that the values, so this is sort of a value versus virtue question, which I think we do in nonprofits a lot too, right? Like, are we so in love with, I know that person goes to church, right? Similarly, like, I know we renamed this school, versus, is that person living the value? Is that thing helping the people who we presume to help? Like, are we moving in the wrong direction from a standpoint of, like, we do so much kind of visible, performative, kind of directionally, morally celebratory stuff instead of things that will actually help? But we have this sort of, we're able to pass that off as being like, yeah, but we did this thing. Yeah, but I used the right words. Yeah, but I signaled the right stuff. But we're not asking the second question, which was like, that's great, and I think that's important.
But
is any of that fundamentally making progress on the issues that real people are living with in real time?
That's deep and wide for me. I guess the easiest way that I think I can equate this, and just even thinking about, I guess how it is. I'm gonna just y'all get to live in my head sometime.
Yeah.
I guess when you think about salvation, that's how I think about it.
Okay.
In the Christian context of salvation, you get saved and you're covered, right?
Sure.
Essentially, you can do whatever you technically want.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. but you are covered by this thing that loves you, right?
That's right.
But then in turn, you go outside and can't love your neighbor.
Sure.
You go outside and you can't understand why some of the things that you are personally doing is harmful, but because you're covered,
That's right.
you're taking that covering. And I think that that's the problem for me, where we're just hoping we're saved. We're hoping we're doing the good things,
Right.
and we're marking our seat for when we get off this earth. But we're not, as they say, we're heavenly. We're no earth, what is it? We're heavenly bound, no earthly good. And I think a lot of people are moving away from even caring about that we are saying that we're Christian, because their value, what they believe, is more important than the rest of us.
Right.
And so I think, it's complicated because I'm an action person.
Yeah.
I want to see what you're doing as a reflection of what you're saying. It's wonderful that you have this thing that can cover you, that backs you, but according to your teachings, according to your knowledge, and according to what you are supposed to be doing, the Jesus that died on that cross, that you can, because I don't even want to claim that cross. I don't want to claim any of that. You're supposed to be following a manifestation and a representation of love, compassion, care for the foreigner. You're supposed to be showing, love
to your neighbor.
Love to your neighbor. You're supposed to be giving up of yourself, but that's not happening. What we see is, honestly, a bastardization of those messages, and we're taking personal values, and then we're wanting to put that on everybody else and say, if you don't think like me, if you don't look like me in many instances, and if you don't act like me, you are not going to get what you want because you are less than. And I think that overall, we have to start valuing one another, period. And I hate the whole color blindness, because I think that that's another layer of religious protections, because everybody can say we're all one in Christ, or we're all one in whatever.
Interesting.
I can't be one with you when you're hurting me.
Right.
And then you want to blame me for my hurt when you're the one that's actively harming me, and I'm watching you harm me continuously. And then when I defend myself, you're like, no. And so I think that we have to understand, beyond any scope of any covering, while I'm here, because the reality is we do not know when we close our eyes for the final time, and we have been here on this earth for whatever length, because there are people who literally do not make it. When we close our eyes, were we the best person that we could possibly be? And the best person from what just a code of humanity with one another. It's not looking at me and saying, you look different and I hate you. It's not saying you don't deserve housing. It's not saying you don't work hard enough, especially when you put people in these particular contexts.
Sure.
It's not, looking at someone and saying you're not qualified for a job because of how you look, or your name is on a paper. Like, that's what you're actually showing me. But then you're asking me to come over here to this side and sit and have dinner with you and break bread in this communal style, church style, or communal style, whatever you want to invite me to. I don't want that. That's why I bring my own table and my own chairs, because if I don't want to stay here, I'm packing up and I'm going. Like, don't do that. So,
yeah,
it's
I mean, we
lot.
know that sort of religiosity, as it were, is declining sharply. Like, our millennials and Gen Z are the least, what they would, surveyed as the least religious generations by a decently wide margin. And I wonder if, I don't know. I don't even know if there's I have a good line on this, but I'm just curious as to what that means, right? Because you can make a cogent argument that for all the good things religion is, it is the cause of all of the wars. right? And so I
just
think I just think it's interesting contextualized as it's become politicized and as it's become sort of again like a virtue signal, right? Of all these people are have to talk about how they believe in God. They have to talk about how they have to show up in church. They have to do a certain thing a certain way. But you're like, all right, man, but like what is any of this other stuff? Like none, right? Like none of the walk is walking.
Exactly.
And I wonder what that means socially if younger people are either hip to that or receding from that, or it's becoming less of a. I mean, think about even sort of when we were growing up, the cultural touchstones were often churches, right? There's a lot of things, more things happened in churches.
I spent more time in church than I ever care to share.
That's right. That's right.
Look, I spent enough time in church to be there covered for a lifetime.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's exactly right. And so I just wonder if that has any implications on sort of the work that we all do when we think about who have become sort of the bedrocks of neighborhoods and who were these kind of anchor points in our society. If that becomes less of an institution, okay, then what, right? Like where, and I don't know if it's good, bad, or otherwise, but just like how does that change the nature of the way that people interact with each other, of the way that people interact with, sort of history and their elders, and it makes a difference. I don't really know what that means, right? But I'm just trying to think about, how if that type of shift is is that a canary in a coal mine for something? And again, given the way it often finds its way, unintelligently, but into political discourse.
I think that is actually very interesting when you think about the birthplace of a lot of just organizing and just activity. Because, for as much as, in my own just trying to unpack the church, it was a place where community came together. It was the place, on them certain Sundays, you're going to get that extra good, that chicken, that Kool-Aid that was probably too sweet.
That's right.
Boy, I got diabetes now.
Yeah.
You get to hang out, you get to see all of the people.
Yep.
But, and I don't think that there's, I think people are just finding other alternative ways to worship and to find community income. So I think it can be a couple of things. Like I literally was talking about this with my wife. I was like, if a church ain't being used for a church right now, let's use it for some organizing space.
Yeah.
Let's turn it. I don't think it needs to change necessarily because the church is dying. That is something that they've been saying has been studied. That is a true statement. But I think it can be a place of repurpose, especially as we are shifting and evolving as a community. Because honestly, I think the sacred space can be anywhere. It can be at the brunch on Sunday. It could be at the church on Sunday. It could be at the circus on a Wednesday.
Yeah, right.
It is wherever we find community. But I do think that there is some definite overlap where folks. It's a tricky one because we want the community, but it's painful too for people.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, Price, your canary in the coal mine thought, because when I realized the church was dying when I was in college, I was like, oh, I thought that like coming from a person who went to church all the time and followed the Lord, I thought that it was the opposite. I thought it was like, oh, that feels like we're moving in the right progressive direction, that people felt the church had become restrictive to their identity, to the way that they wanted to live righteously for their community and different identities. And they were like, the church harmed me in ways. And in a more progressive way, I'm going to leave the church in a progressive way. Because the church isn't actually walking the walk and doing the talk. It's a place where people who are unjust as people, not specifically talking about, because they were religious in a sense that like they still believed in God, but they didn't believe in church. Yeah. So I thought it was actually a good thing. I was like, oh, people are leaving the church because it's not right. They know it's unjust. It's harming people in ways it shouldn't be harming people.
Right.
So I thought people leaving the church was good. I was like, okay, well, if people are leaving the church because it's not progressive enough and it's hurting people, that's good. Yeah. But to hear you say people are leaving the church and we still in a bad political direction, now I'm like,
Because think about the evangelical
both
movement.
those things are happening simultaneously. It's like people leave the church, they walk out the church and they got to take a left or a right. I'm going to take a left because the church was wrong and unjust. I'm going to take a right. I left because they weren't doing enough wrong and enough unjust. Yeah, right. But no, I got to get more Christian. I got to get more religion.
But that has been, that is literally like, that is the thing. Like how, and it's like, people want to. I know people deeply want to be in that space,
absolutely,
and in the community and do it. But like you said, for just a lot of it's harmful.
Yeah, I know a lot of people left the church because it was harmful.
We also, once again, we're seeing the other side, and they, like you said, politicizing it. This is a call to action, and it is virtual signaling. It is coding, because if you're not in this space, you're anti. There was literally, and I cannot think of. Yeah. It was a few weeks ago. There was a white preacher who called out the black church, and I'm just like, how silly that you're calling out the black church for standing up for civil rights and for people's protections and for LGBTQ and for women, and you're mad because
there's two churches of thought, obviously.
But isn't that so? I guess the question would be, isn't that? I think the thing that has always not bugged me, but been very interesting to me about religion is that we're just talking about your interpretation of right, and so right. Like someone said the other day, they were just like the Mona Lisa is not very good, but we decided it's great, and so now it's great.
Right,
we just decided it's great, and so you can't turn up and be like, that's not.
I'm telling you,
can't even say
it's not very good.
Now
right?
you're the bigot because you don't understand art.
That's exactly right. And so we have
this.
So we have this thing about religiosity, right? Where we're talking about all these things that have to do with gay marriage and all these things that have to do with society and this, that, and the third. And someone's like, well, I read that exact same sentence differently. Exactly. And so I'm just interested in one of the first things that I learned, and I took a philosophy class in college, and the one thing the professor said that stuck with me, he goes, don't ever argue with someone who won't even acknowledge the fact that they might be wrong. Right? We can disagree on, and it's not to say that we don't have different viewpoints. We're going to come to the table and be like, okay, we can still have it out, but there's a common goal, and we're both going to accept the possibility that I'm either wrong or I missed something. Right? At that point, that's productive. But I feel like much of our dialogue revolves around a dangerous combination of incorrigibility and ignorance. Right? Like you're dug in, and you also don't have enough information. Right, but most of it's grounded in that. It's grounded in I was raised in a household that told me that women should only stay in the house and cook, and that's what the Bible says.
Well, welcome to divinity school.
People can't even read.
No,
Price said 2 weeks ago the nation got 6th grade Libra level talking about the dang Bible.
That's true.
They can't even read.
That's true.
So anybody who tell me that that's what's something in the Bible, I'm like, the chance you can read is zero.
You got to think the version.
Yeah.
Are you reading the same version?
I'm not worried about it.
But also, that's the craziest part about church, though, is that you stand up there, you have someone telling you what to believe and what to think. You don't check it because he is ordained. That is exactly right. And so then you're just like, all right, bet. That's it.
So welcome to divinity school. I used to say when I'm sitting in the midst of writing these papers, how are you asking me to write this paper graded off of what somebody else thought? We're all just writing down our own personal thoughts in this place. So I should always get an A.
I should always get an A.
Right. That's right.
How you gonna tell me this is not what it says?
That's exactly right.
It's all, once again, and no shots to divinity education, and all institutions aren't the same, but those are the questions that I was even asking in the space. Number one, where are the scholars of color? Because it cannot just be one perspective, because even a lot of the stipulations, like if you want to move on to PhD work, you have to do language requirements and sometimes. So I took Greek, ancient Greek.
Oh my Lord!
I don't want that.
I don't want that.
Look, I'm in the sorority. Could I read the letters? Yes.
There you go. Yeah, sure.
What sorority?
Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated.
I'm a Zeta.
Okay, we all fall
D9,
short.
we all fine. D9, we all fine.
I know you want to put that fine in there. That's all right. But no, like that honestly was the questions that we were having, because number one, we have voices missing that you're asking me to examine voices in the first place. But then when I'm examining them, I only have this one set. You want me to argue in this very particular type of way. I mean, you can have your own thought, but historically, you're teaching me Bart.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's not the only a leading authority in the expert in the world. And honestly, I'm writing my own stuff. So, you told me I'm a master of divinity, so here we are.
That's right.
Everybody's a theologian in this piece.
Yeah.
So that is what it is, and I think that's what frustrates me a lot of time about religion is like it literally is subjective. Just because I believe how I believe doesn't mean that my personal view is I'm not going to force you to believe anything because you're your own creature.
I know, evangelist.
And for me, your own divinity, whatever that personal thing that guides you and gives you direction and the protection that you feel in your life, follow that. Once again, are you harming me? Are you harming some children? And are you harming yourself? Because if you want to harm yourself, that's on you. I don't want to be in that way. So just don't include me if it's going to be doing that. But other than that, we all making this stuff. Life is literally all about us making up something. And all of the good information sometimes stick. And we see now, for real, a lot of the bad information also sticks. So it's up to us as humans that have intuition and discernment for ourselves to digest and investigate information, investigate. Even the facts now, I investigate the facts. Like, are there more than one source reporting this thing?
Sure.
Because
that's even hard still, though. It's hard because your mind gets into this pattern. It's like even the facts ain't the facts.
And
now you're conspiracy theory. Because the thing is, but my thing is, 20 news outlets on any side of the aisle can be reporting on a thing. That thing could still be false. Like that.
See, it's all we all just here making it up.
Which is hard. That's hard. You don't want to say
you are spiraling.
Yeah, like how can 20 people on different sides of the aisle both be wrong if they're both reporting on it? Oh, very easy. Very easy. We've seen it. So it's really hard.
No, that's so.
I mean, it's true. So let me ask you this:
do your own research. I mean, go take a plane out west.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that's funny though is that people say I did the research, which basically means they agree with the one person from their middle school on Facebook. Instead, at the opposition of the people who did the research.
I literally hate when I see do your own research, because when a person say that, I be like, I wish y'all could see my face.
But I'm like, the people who wrote the peer-reviewed papers did the research, right? Like, that's what y'all did.
I'm not gullible enough. Do your own research. Are you okay?
It's crazy.
Can you read?
These are some troubling times.
It is.
Some troubling times.
Yeah, do your own research. It also, the search engines suck. Like, all of them. Just, you type in something, and it come back with an AI answer. I'm like,
it does.
And it's wrong sometimes. I don't know if they be saying
the large language models are scraping things that exist.
Okay, well, examples. I want to tell a really quick example. This morning, I asked it for Black Aquarian music artist.
Black Aquarian music artist.
Yeah, because I'm trying to make a playlist.
Okay.
I'm an Aquarian. My birthday was last week.
Black Aquarian.
And it gave me Trayvon Martin in the list. And if you don't...
What?
And now, mind you.
Oh, wow.
Mind you. That's what I'm trying to say is that, like...
Wow.
Wouldn't do your own research mean in a world that we've created, like, systems for people to search, and them things are also broke? Like, okay, I tried. Like, what do I do?
Wow.
It told me something completely different. Like, it gave me... It was a list of people. It was a list of people. It gave me a list of people. And Trayvon Martin was on the list.
Well, information is currency.
I said, well, I am shocked.
Shocked.
I was shocked.
Shocked.
I said, I didn't know he made music.
Shocked.
Wow.
I said, this is crazy.
Give me before we let you go, tell me just very quickly, what do you think about, so you are, I would say, into that phase where you've sort of figured out, like, at least what keys open what doors, and like you know everybody's name, right? Like
I do.
You've got the foundation set. Yeah, that's right. Look, it takes a lot. It takes a little while, right, just to figure out like what's going on. So what do you think? In the back half of the year, right? What are your goals for far in the short term? And then if you look, you mentioned something which I think is remarkable and interesting. You were like 5-10 years. I told my board I'd give you 3.
Praise don't play. He's I can't be doing it for the rest of my life.
But I mean, short term, and right now that you're ripping and running, but then also long term, like what do you? And again, in a quote unquote in a perfect world, like we control what we can control, and I think there's a really interesting conversation to be had about the things that we're doing. We get really wrapped up into the federal conversations and the state level conversations, and they're important, right? What ICE is doing is important. What we're doing about the Office of Management and Budget is important, but sometimes I think we forget that like we have hands on the levers at the hyper local level, right?
Yes.
So what do you think about for the next 6 months into the summer? But then also if you want to look sort of 4, 5, 10 years into the future, what are your goals for what FAR's doing?
So short term, honestly, getting some new organizers. We are. Shameless plug.
Yeah.
We are looking for some new organizers, honestly, just to make sure that our foundation is continuing to be built. So we're working on that. We got some great new people in, but I just need a few more people to kind of get that together. So building strength there, but also continuing to build relationships with community members, because once again, I'm new here, and a lot of the staff is new, and so we're going through our the baby's here, but we gotta grow. So we're going through the growing, being out in community, letting people know like this is what we're doing. How are we helping? How can we help you envision a better space? And that's really the short term. Is honestly just gonna be community, building community, point blank period, spending my time, and then of course doing the stuff I gotta do.
Yep.
But long term, my goal is to make sure that we are number one, continuing to fiercely advocate for the preservation of public housing, as we're especially right now going through redevelopment with multiple sites.
Yeah.
So making sure that we're having successful redevelopments where community members' voices are actually being heard and valued. And I know CRHA and we're working together to make sure that those things are happening. So just strengthening community knowledge in that perspective, but making sure that their voices are heard in that process. As redevelopment, in some places people have had to leave those communities.
That's right.
So just making sure that the community that they envisioned and that they're building is going to be the place that they can truly come back to, that it is truly continuously affordable, and that they have all of their needs met there. So that is the biggest hope, and of course continuously raising awareness about housing affordability. Not just we fiercely work with public housing, but we also advocate for housing affordability. And then also, honestly, what I've learned is, like I said, intersectionality, and I see it so much clearer now. We deal with so many issues other than just housing. Housing is literally just the core of what we do, but it's not all we do. Our community members are experiencing many other things that are, just like everybody else. So making sure that they have access and tools and resources, because once again, we don't know with this current administration back and forth playing with taking money, taking not money, how that is. But what we know is that there are people that are really being impacted, and just making sure that they're going to have the things that they need in place as we are navigating, as everybody is saying, these new normals. And I don't necessarily know if it was a new normal. It's just a new year with a new person, and we're having to move on. So the biggest thing is, I guess, also back to the 6 months, I'll throw that in there, and I'll continue to say it until I turn blue in the face. Action. I want to mobilize the people. I want to make sure that people, like we were even talking about space, there's a space to come and mobilize and just talk. Like, even if there's a lot going on from many different sides, perspectives, no matter what you're thinking, no matter what you're feeling, but having a communal space to come in here and say, I am here. We are acting. We want housing affordability. We want mental health services. We want better education for our children. We want better access to food. There's several projects even in the community talking about food and all of these things, making sure that we have our basic human rights being met.
That's right.
If people want to get in touch with you and be organizers and well, how can they find you?
Please hit that website, farcville.org. We have the information about our organizing applications on there, and any other things that might be of interest to you. Then also, if you just want to hit me up on LinkedIn, my name is Latricia Giles, so please find me on LinkedIn. I'm there. And then also FAR's website, we have Instagram, and it's at FarCville on Instagram. We got Facebook too, FAR. Just put that in there as well. So we a couple of places, but just please, if you are a person that is committed to justice and you're here for the liberation of all people, please make sure you get in contact with me. I would love to work with you in any capacity, and I'm excited for the future of whoever is coming.
That is the executive director of FAR, Latricia Giles. Big thanks for hanging out with us.
Oh, this was fun. I need to do this more often.
Listen, you are always welcome. If you have ideas for the show or want to contact us, check us out on social media, all platforms at United Way Cville, at City of Promise, or the inbox is open at envision@unitedwaycville.org. And again, FAR, PHAR, Cville, CVILLE.org, and on social media at FAR Cville and at FAR PHAR. We get support on the show from folks at the United Way. If you like what you hear, share with your friends, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform for new episodes every week. And, of course, the best way to support us, consider making a contribution to City of Promise, United Way, to FAR. That's how we keep doing our community work. And, of course, your favorite podcast. Again, Envision Radio is brought to you by the Jefferson School Foundation. And big thanks to Kim Sheffield and that crew. For Latricia, Marky, this is Bryce. We'll see you next week.
Next week.